She was 84 years old. She had a pacemaker in her chest, a garden she tended every morning, and a front porch where she watched the desert evenings come in slow and quiet over the Catalina foothills. She was not famous. She had never wanted to be. She raised 3 children after her husband died, kept her head down, kept her faith, kept going. And then one morning in the first hours of February, she was gone. Not wandered off. Not confused. Gone. Taken. Planned, executed, and vanished into a night that someone had been studying for weeks before it happened. My name is not important. What is important is what I am about to show you. Because this case, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC anchor Savannah Guthrie, is unlike anything that has happened in the modern era of crime investigation. Not because of who her daughter is. Not because of the celebrity dimension. But because of what the evidence is. Because for the first time in the history of missing persons investigations in the United States, a device implanted inside the chest of a living human being became the most important witness in a federal kidnapping case. And that device has been recording every single heartbeat since the moment Nancy was taken. Every second of everything she has experienced in more than 100 days of absence is stored inside a machine the size of a small matchbox inside her chest. And the people responsible for what happened to her do not know exactly what that machine captured. But the FBI does. And what it captured changes this entire investigation. I want to start where this story actually starts. Not on the night Nancy disappeared. Before that. Weeks before that. Because what happened to Nancy Guthrie was not a crime of impulse. It was not a random act. It was a campaign. A methodical, patient, studied campaign carried out by people who had been watching her life long before they moved against it. The FBI's digital evidence analysis identified January 11, 2026, as a significant date in this investigation. That is 3 weeks before Nancy was taken. 3 weeks before a masked figure appeared at her front door, someone was already there. Already watching. Already learning. The layout of the house. The timing of her days. The cameras. The gate. The lighting. The rhythm of when cars came and went and when the street went quiet. 3 weeks of watching an 84-year-old woman live her life so that the night they came for her, nothing would be left to chance. On the evening of Saturday, January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie was at her daughter Annie's house for dinner. She arrived at 5:32 in the afternoon. She spent 4 hours there. She had dinner. She played games. She was with family. At 9:48 that night, she was driven home and walked to her front door by Annie's husband, Tommaso Dominic. He walked her inside. He says he confirmed she was safely in. Then he left. That was the last time any member of the Guthrie family saw Nancy alive. 3 hours and 57 minutes passed. 3 hours and 57 minutes of nothing. And then at exactly 1:47 in the morning of February 1st, 2026, a masked figure appeared at Nancy Guthrie's front door. And at that exact same second, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker logged a sudden, severe, acute cardiac spike. Not gradual. Not the slow climb of someone waking from a dream. Sudden. The kind of spike that forensic cardiologists associate with one thing and one thing only. A conscious person who is suddenly and overwhelmingly terrified. At the exact second that figure appeared at her door, her heart told the truth about what was happening. She was awake. She knew. And her body recorded it in data that cannot be altered, cannot be faked, cannot be explained away. The doorbell camera went dark at 1:47. Her pacemaker registered the spike at 1:47. Those 2 data points are synchronized to the same second. That is not a coincidence. That is evidence. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker lost its connection to the bedside monitoring unit in her bedroom. 41 minutes. Camera dark at 1:47. Pacemaker sync gone at 2:28. 41 minutes of silence from the inside of that house. And everything that happened inside those 41 minutes was recorded, heartbeat by heartbeat, in the internal memory of the device in her chest. Because here is what most people do not understand about modern pacemakers. They are not just rhythm regulators. They are continuous data recorders. Every beat logged with a timestamp. Every arrhythmia captured. Every physiological change the body experiences, stored. And the most advanced devices also contain accelerometers, sensors that can detect and distinguish between voluntary movement, a person walking under their own power, and passive movement, a person being carried or transported by someone else. Nancy's pacemaker had all of this. The FBI subpoenaed the cloud data from her device's manufacturer in the first week of February. And what the forensic cardiac specialists found inside that data tells us, minute by minute, what actually happened to Nancy Guthrie between 1:47 and 2:28 in the morning. In the first minutes after that cardiac spike, her heart rate did not come back down. It stayed elevated. The rhythm showed irregularities that specialists associate with sustained extreme emotional distress. Not a momentary fright that passes. Sustained terror. Whatever entered that house at 1:47 did not go away. It stayed. And Nancy's body recorded every second of it. Approximately 15 to 20 minutes into that 41-minute window, the accelerometer data changes. The movement pattern shifts from voluntary to passive. Not Nancy walking. Not Nancy moving from room to room. Nancy being transported. Being carried. Being moved by someone else. And the character of that movement, the rhythm and duration of it, is consistent with one specific thing. Being placed inside a vehicle and driven away. And then, in the final 10 to 15 minutes before the sync stops at 2:28, the most disturbing finding in the entire pacemaker analysis appears. The natural beat-to-beat variation in a conscious person's heart rate, what cardiologists call heart rate variability, begins to decrease significantly. Not gradually. Specifically. In a pattern that has one clinical meaning and one meaning only. Pharmacological sedation. Someone administered a drug to Nancy Guthrie in the final minutes before that pacemaker lost contact with the outside world. An 84-year-old woman with a chronic heart condition was given a sedative in her own home in the middle of the night. That sedative was brought there. Researched. Acquired. Planned for. You do not stumble across medical-grade sedatives. You obtain them with intent for a specific purpose. And the specific cardiac signature that the sedation produced in Nancy's data narrows the range of compounds that could have caused it. And narrowing the compound narrows the list of people who could have obtained it. And the FBI is following that procurement trail right now. At 2:28, the sync stopped. Not because Nancy's heart stopped. Because the vehicle she was in had driven far enough from her home that the bedside unit could no longer reach the pacemaker's Bluetooth signal. At 2:28 in the morning of February 1st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie was alive. Her heart was beating. The device inside her chest confirmed it. And the internal memory of that pacemaker, the data recorded after 2:28 that no one can access until Nancy is found, has been logging every heartbeat since that moment. Every second. Every day. More than 100 days stored inside a device that no one can reach without finding her first. 6 minutes after that pacemaker sync stopped, a Ring doorbell camera on a quiet residential road called Camino Royale, 2.5 miles from Nancy's home, captured a vehicle passing through at 2:36 in the morning. The math fits exactly. 2 minutes of margin between the expected arrival time and the actual capture. 2 minutes is exactly what you expect if a driver paused at the end of Nancy Street, took a breath, removed a ski mask, checked the mirrors, made sure no one was watching, and then pulled away carefully onto a back road. A retired NYPD detective analyzed the footage and assessed the vehicle as a Kia Soul. The Pima County Sheriff confirmed to NBC News that the vehicle's timing matches the abduction window and that it is part of the active investigation. And the road that car was traveling on leads south toward Interstate 19. Interstate 19 runs directly toward Rio Rico, Arizona. Rio Rico sits 60 miles north of the Mexican border. The FBI sub-office in Sonora, Mexico, has been in contact with Mexican law enforcement in connection with this case. Now I want to talk about what happened at that doorbell camera. Because the behavior of the person who appeared there tells you more about who this person is than almost any other single piece of evidence in this investigation. He arrived dressed entirely in black. Ski mask. Nitrile gloves. An Ozark Trail 25-liter backpack from Walmart. Armed. And when he reached the camera, he did not search for it. He walked directly to it. He knew exactly where it was. He tapped the lens twice, lightly, casually, the way someone touches a piece of furniture they walk past every day of their life. When tapping did not disable it, he reached into a nearby potted plant and covered the lens with foliage. Calm. Deliberate. Unhurried. He had been on that porch before. Many times. His body moved through that space the way a body moves through a space it has memorized over years. Body language experts who reviewed the footage used a specific phrase for how he moved. They called it ownership behavior. He did not hesitate. He did not scan. He moved with the certainty of someone who already knew every inch of where he was. That is not the movement of a stranger casing an unfamiliar property. That is muscle memory. 9 days before he walked onto Nancy's porch, on January 23rd, a man matching the same physical description was captured on a Ring camera 6.5 miles away. And what he did on that camera is one of the most chilling details in this entire case. He was walking backward. Not stumbling. Not confused. Deliberately, methodically walking backward past a home with a Ring camera. Because consumer security cameras use passive infrared sensors that require 1 to 2 seconds to wake up, adjust, and begin recording. Walk toward a camera, and it captures your face as you approach. Walk backward, and by the time the camera is actually recording, all it sees is the back of your head. This person had studied how these cameras work. He had learned about the sensor lag. He was using his own body to defeat it. And when a dog in a nearby yard started barking, he fled. But he maintained his backward orientation as he ran, moving fast enough that this position risked tripping and falling. He suppressed the instinctive reflex to turn toward a sudden, unexpected sound. He would rather risk falling than give that camera a single frame of his face. That level of discipline in a moment of unexpected stress does not come from nowhere. It comes from preparation, from practice, from someone who had rehearsed this scenario in their mind enough times that the trained behavior overrode the survival instinct. January 23rd was the test run. When law enforcement did not show up at his door the next morning, he confirmed he was invisible. By February 1st, he was not testing anymore. He was executing. Now I need to talk about the evidence that directly connects 2 specific people to this crime. And I want to be absolutely clear before I do. Neither of the men I am about to discuss has been officially named by law enforcement as a suspect or a person of interest. Everything I am about to present comes from documented public records, confirmed forensic evidence, named journalistic sources, and expert analysis that is part of the public record. You make your own judgment. The FBI recovered 2 separate DNA profiles from 2 separate locations, both connected to this crime. Profile 1 came from biological material found inside Nancy's home. Profile 2 came from a glove recovered 2 miles away. Both profiles belong to unknown males. Neither matches Nancy. Neither matches her family. And critically, neither matches a single person in the FBI's CODIS database of 19 million known offender profiles. 2 people were there. The evidence of 2 people is written into the physical and forensic record of this crime. Someone disabled the front camera. Someone else smashed the rear floodlights before the abduction. Simultaneous. Pre-planned. Coordinated. 2 people who agreed on their positions and arrived with their roles already assigned. Former FBI negotiator Chip Massey stated directly to reporters that controlling an elderly hostage while managing a physical extraction requires a level of coordination that a single operator cannot sustain under that kind of time pressure. This was a 2-person operation from the beginning. Tommaso Dominic is 50 years old, born in Tuscany, Italy. He has been married to Annie Guthrie, Nancy's eldest daughter, since 2006. 20 years of being part of that family. 20 years of Friday night dinners. 20 years of walking through Nancy's front gate, past her cameras, through her front door, down her hallway, into her kitchen. He knew that house better than almost anyone alive. He knew the layout in the dark. He knew the cameras. And he knew those cameras were not recording. Nancy's Nest camera system did not have an active cloud subscription. The cameras could detect motion and send alerts, but they were not storing continuous footage. They were, for all practical purposes, props. Expensive-looking props. The FBI had to partner with Google specifically to recover residual data from back-end servers after the fact because there was no stored footage to access normally. Now think carefully about who would know that. Not a stranger casing the house from the street. A stranger looking at those cameras would assume they were recording because that is what cameras do. The only people who would know those cameras were essentially decoration are the people who spent time inside that house regularly. The people who helped Nancy set them up. The people who walked past them every Friday for 20 years and never once saw a notification confirming footage was saved. Tommaso Dominic is an AP biology teacher at a charter school in Tucson. College-level molecular biology. His students learn PCR amplification, the exact same technique forensic laboratories use to process crime scene DNA. His students learn gel electrophoresis, the exact same method used to create the genetic profiles that go into Cody's. He puts on nitrile gloves every single working day of his professional life. He handles specimens without contaminating them. He knows how DNA transfers between surfaces. He knows what a forensic technician searches for at a crime scene. And he knows what they miss. The suspect on Nancy's porch was wearing nitrile gloves. The same gloves found in every biology classroom in America. And nitrile gloves, as any scientist will tell you, are not perfect barriers against DNA transfer. Micro tears form during physical exertion. Sweat builds inside the glove within minutes. If you are wearing nitrile gloves while physically carrying an elderly woman, perspiration breaches the material. A biology teacher who teaches forensic science concepts would know this. Which means a biology teacher would also know to dispose of those gloves far from the scene. Miles away. In a location where nobody would think to look. Someone found one anyway, 2 miles from Nancy's home, with a male DNA profile inside it that matches nothing in the federal database. On the evening of January 31st, Tommaso was the last known person to see Nancy alive. He drove her home. He walked her to the door. Then he drove away. 4 miles. 10 minutes on empty desert roads. No confirmed public alibi for the 3 hours and 57 minutes between when he dropped Nancy off and when the camera went dark has ever been released. Nancy was taken on the exact weekend that Savannah Guthrie was scheduled to travel internationally for NBC's coverage of the Winter Olympics. Olympic assignments are determined months in advance. If you wanted to target Nancy during the window when her most formidable family member would be as far away as possible and as occupied as possible, you would need to know Savannah's travel schedule in advance. The ransom demand was $6 million in Bitcoin. Not 5 million. Not 10 million. 6 million. That is a number that says I know what Savannah Guthrie actually earns. I know what she can access and move quickly. An outsider who has never sat at that family's dinner table demands 50 million because strangers think big when they imagine wealth. An insider with 20 years of dinner table conversations about money lands on 6 million because an insider knows what is actually reachable. The Bitcoin wallet has been completely inactive since the moment it was created. The FBI sent a test amount to the address as a trap. 0 activity. Nobody touched it in more than 100 days. The ransom was not the point. The ransom was a story. A narrative designed to direct investigators toward a financial motive and away from everything else. And the medication left on Nancy's kitchen counter tells the same story from a different angle. If you are kidnapping an elderly woman for ransom, the most critical item in that house is her medication. A dead hostage is worth nothing. You take the pills. You show you intend to keep her alive. Whoever was in that house left the pills behind. Keeping her alive long enough to collect a ransom was never the plan. In May of 2025, 8 months before the kidnapping, Tommaso Dominic signed a durable power of attorney giving Annie control over his financial and property affairs. The document exists. The timing exists. The kidnapping exists. When Nancy disappeared, every member of the Guthrie family went public immediately. Savannah stood on national television and said every hour has been agony. She offered $1 million of her own money as a reward. Her brother Cameron spoke directly to the kidnapper on camera. Annie cooperated with investigators and spoke publicly. Every single member of that family screamed into the void hoping someone would answer. Except one person. Tommaso Dominic did not post a statement. Not one word. He did not appear in a video. He did not stand beside his wife while she begged the world to find her mother. He was not publicly seen for nearly a full week after the disappearance. Innocent people do not stay quiet when their mother-in-law is missing and the entire country is looking for her. Innocent people cannot stop talking. The grief spills out of them. They go on every camera they can find. They call every journalist who will pick up. Silence is a choice. And people make that choice when their attorney sits them down and says every word that comes out of your mouth is a potential exhibit at your trial. The Pima County Sheriff publicly cleared the family in February 2026. All siblings and spouses. But federal agents returned to Annie and Tommaso's home more than 5 separate times after that public clearance. They removed items in brown paper bags. Brown paper bags are used specifically by law enforcement to preserve biological evidence. They are not used for routine follow-up visits. Annie's vehicle was towed and impounded. Their septic tank was physically examined. Security cameras were removed from their property. You do not do that to people you have cleared. Law enforcement does not send teams to examine septic tanks and impound vehicles belonging to people who are no longer of interest. Dominic Evans is 48 years old. He is an elementary school teacher in the Tucson area. And since 2007, he has been the drummer in a band called Early Black alongside bassist Tommaso 19 years as bandmates. They found each other through classified ads in 2007. They recorded their debut album at Loveland Studios in Tucson in late 2009. They named that album Life, Love, Love, Murder. I am not saying an album title is evidence, but it is a window into the people who chose it. On February 12, 2026, the FBI released its official physical description of the suspect captured on Nancy's doorbell camera. Male, 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, average build, black mustache and goatee visible beneath the ski mask. And former FBI profiler Jim Clemente identified what he believed was a tattoo or distinctive marking on the suspect's right wrist visible in the camera frames. Dominic Evans is approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, average build. He has been photographed publicly with a black mustache and goatee, and in performance footage from Early Black that is available online and that investigators and independent researchers have reviewed. A marking on his right wrist is visible and is consistent with what Clemente described from the FBI footage. Every single element of the FBI's physical description of the suspect maps onto Dominic Evans. The Pima County Judicial Database contains documented felony entries for Dominic Evans: burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement. Burglary is the unlawful entry into a structure with the intent to commit a crime inside. Robbery is the taking of property from a person through force or the threat of force. The documented skill set in those court files, unlawful entry, confrontation of a person, taking property by force, overlaps precisely and specifically with what happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home in the early morning hours of February 1st. And yet, neither of the 2 DNA profiles recovered from this investigation matched a single person in the FBI's database of 19 million known offender profiles. For a person with documented felony convictions, an absence from CODIs requires a specific explanation. Arizona's DNA collection laws have been amended multiple times. If Evans's convictions were entered before the state implemented mandatory DNA collection requirements for his specific categories of offense, or if any of his cases were resolved through plea agreements that did not trigger automatic DNA submission, then he could have multiple felony entries in the county judicial system and remain completely invisible to the federal database. A documented criminal record. No DNA on file anywhere the FBI can access. That specific combination is the forensic equivalent of a ghost. A ghost who fits every element of the FBI's physical description of the suspect. In mid-April 2026, it was confirmed that DNA evidence from Nancy's home had been sent to the FBI laboratory at Quantico, Virginia. A rootless hair sample and biological material recovered from a bed sheet clipping. The FBI is working with Astrea Forensics, a California-based laboratory that specializes in low copy number DNA analysis, the analysis of genetic material that is degraded or present in extremely small quantities. And CeCe Moore is involved in this case. If you do not know that name, you need to. CeCe Moore is one of the most consequential forensic genealogists in the United States. She was central to the identification of the Golden State Killer, a man who had evaded capture for decades and who was identified through genetic material from old crime scenes cross-referenced against public genealogy databases. She has cracked cold cases that had been sitting untouched for 40 years. She has produced results in cases that were considered permanently unsolvable. The combination of Astrea Forensics technology and CeCe Moore's methodology means that even if the hair sample from Nancy's home is degraded, even if it is a partial profile, there is a genuine and serious probability of building a usable genetic result. And there are 2 DNA profiles. 2 separate sets of genetic material. 2 separate family trees. 2 independent chances to find a connection in a publicly available genealogy database. A partial match to a distant relative is the only thread investigators need to start pulling. From a second cousin match, A skilled genetic genealogist builds upward and forward through family trees until they arrive at a name. That is how it works. That is how it has worked in dozens of solved cases. And it has produced convictions that held up in court. FBI Director Kash Patel went on television on May 5, 2026 and publicly criticized the Pima County Sheriff's Department by name. He said the FBI was locked out of this investigation for nearly 4 full days after Nancy disappeared. 4 days. While an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker and limited mobility and daily medication needs was somewhere without any of those things. 4 days in a kidnapping case where every hour of the first 72 matters more than almost anything that comes after. Patel said it was only after the FBI was finally allowed access that the critical doorbell camera footage was obtained and released to the public. He said the Pima County Sheriff's Department sent DNA evidence found outside Nancy's home to a private laboratory in Florida, rather than routing it directly to the FBI laboratory at Quantico. The most advanced forensic DNA facility in the United States was available. They sent it to Florida. That is not a procedural disagreement between bureaucracies. That is an 84-year-old woman's life. And the people who made those decisions need to own what those decisions cost. On May 7, 2026, Sheriff Nanos told reporters directly that investigators are closer to solving this case. The procurement trail for the sedative compound identified in Nancy's pacemaker data is an active investigative thread right now. Cell tower records from the Tucson area on the night of January 31st and the morning of February 1st are being analyzed. Purchase histories are being traced. The genetic genealogy analysis is ongoing. 3 of the most credentialed criminal investigation experts in the United States, Dr. and Burgess, who directly inspired the Netflix series Mindhunter and helped develop modern criminal profiling, Dr. Gary Botto of Boston College, and Dr. Casey Jordan, criminologist, all stated publicly that the operative who physically walked onto Nancy's porch may already be dead, eliminated by the person who planned and organized the operation to prevent identification. If that is true, the DNA, the pacemaker data, the car footage, the glove, the hair sample at Quantico, those become the only voices left speaking in this case. And unlike human witnesses, physical evidence does not make deals. It does not get nervous under questioning. It does not change its story to protect someone. It is simply what it is. Every partnership built on secrecy has a breaking point. The moment when each person starts calculating whether the other is willing to sacrifice them to survive. In a 2-person operation, the first person who walks into a federal building and starts cooperating receives the cooperation agreement, the consideration, the reduced exposure. The second person receives the full weight of what federal prosecutors have been building toward for more than 100 days. Kidnapping of a vulnerable adult. Conspiracy. Use of a controlled substance in the commission of a federal felony. Transportation of a kidnapping victim across state lines or international borders. Whatever held 2 men together, 19 years of band rehearsals and shared stages and a debut album, was built for music. It was designed to hold under the weight of missed rehearsals and bad gigs and creative disagreements. It was not designed to hold under the weight of a federal investigation into the kidnapping of an 84-year-old woman. Trust erodes. It erodes faster when the walls start closing. It erodes fastest of all when $1 million in anonymous cash is sitting there waiting for whoever picks up the phone first. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She raised 3 children after her husband died in a mining accident in Mexico in 1988. She was 46 years old when that happened. She did not collapse. She did not ask for sympathy. She kept going. She built that life. She tended her garden. She attended church every Sunday. She lived in the same home in the Catalina foothills for decades. She watched her daughter become one of the most recognized journalists in the country and stayed quiet and stayed home and sat on her porch and lived the life she wanted to live. And then someone decided to study that life, to surveil it, to plan against it, to target her. Her pacemaker is still inside her chest right now, today, more than 100 days after February 1st. That device is still running, still logging every heartbeat with a timestamp. Every moment she has experienced since 2:28 in the morning of February 1st, every difficult hour, every quieter moment, every second of every day in more than 100 days of absence is recorded inside a device the size of a small matchbox implanted in the chest of a woman who deserves to be home. Elizabeth Smart spoke to reporters in May 2026 and said that Nancy could absolutely still be alive after this amount of time. Elizabeth Smart is not speculating. She is speaking from experience. On Mother's Day, May 10, 2026, Savannah Guthrie posted a tribute to her mother on social media. A daughter calling out into silence, hoping her mother can hear her from wherever she is. The DNA at Quantico is being processed. The genetic genealogy analysis is running. The cell towers do not lie. The purchase records do not lie. The car on Camino Royale at 2:36 in the morning does not lie. And the pacemaker data that recorded every second of what happened to Nancy inside her own home does not lie. If you are in the Tucson area or anywhere in southern Arizona and you saw something in the weeks around the end of January that did not sit right with you, a late drive at an unusual hour, a conversation that felt wrong, a purchase that seemed strange, something you have been carrying quietly in the back of your mind, you know what to do. The tip line number is in the description. $1 million. Completely anonymous. Pick up the phone. Bring Nancy home.